Imagine a land so vast, so strategically positioned, that nations see it as the key to global power. Greenland, an island of ice, resources, and secrets. Today, it is a peaceful territory under Denmark's care, but the United States is now openly talking about acquiring it. Not through diplomacy alone. The White House has made it clear the military is not off the table. President Trump, in the wake of the US capture of Nicolas Maduro, signals a bold, expansionist vision. Greenland is no longer just a remote island. It is a national security priority. European leaders warn of consequences. Denmark warns of NATO's fragility. And yet, the administration insists it is discussing a range of options. You might ask, could the US really take Greenland? And what would that mean for global stability? The answers are complex, and they start here. To understand why Greenland matters so deeply, we must first examine the strategic, historical, and geopolitical forces at play. The issue is not just geography. It is power, resources, and strategy. Greenland sits between the United States, Europe, and Russia. Its ice hides vast deposits of oil, gas, and rare earth minerals. Control over Greenland could shift the balance of influence in the Arctic. The White House frames it as a national security priority. President Trump argues Denmark cannot safeguard it against adversaries. Senior aides insist no one would resist US power over Greenland. Yet, Greenland is a NATO ally. It hosts US military bases. It is part of international agreements, not a land up for grabs. European leaders warn that treating Greenland as optional risks destabilizing alliances. Some US lawmakers call the discussion reckless. They fear an invasion could spark diplomatic chaos, even threaten NATO. At its heart, the question is stark. Can ambition override law and alliances? Or does Greenland represent a test of global norms in the 21st century? To answer that, we must go back in time. We need to understand Greenland's history, its ties to Denmark, and why it has become a geopolitical flashpoint. Greenland has long been more than ice and snow. For centuries, it has been a Danish territory. Its people have their own culture, language, and traditions. Yet, its strategic location has drawn the eyes of global powers. During the Cold War, Greenland was a crucial US military outpost. Bases were built to monitor Soviet activity in the Arctic. The island became a symbol of the struggle for influence in the north. Resources were largely untapped, but the potential was clear. Oil, gas, and rare earth minerals beneath the ice attracted interest. For the United States, Greenland represents both opportunity and security. President Trump's renewed interest is rooted in this history. He sees a land that could shift the balance of power in the Arctic. European leaders, however, remind the world that Greenland is not just strategic, it is sovereign. Any attempt to acquire it risks disrupting decades of alliances. History shows that ambition in the Arctic carries consequences. To understand the stakes today, we must examine the first major crisis surrounding Greenland. A warning comes not from history alone, but from recent events that sent shockwaves across the world. In the past weeks, the world watched in disbelief. The White House openly discussed acquiring Greenland, not just through negotiation, but with the military on the table. President Trump framed it as a national security priority. Senior aides echoed the message. No one would resist US power over Greenland, they claimed. This was not a subtle suggestion. It was a declaration. An international shockwave followed immediately. European leaders condemned the remarks. Denmark warned that a military move could fracture NATO. Leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Poland, and Britain stressed collective security in the Arctic. Within the US, lawmakers reacted. Democrats called for resolutions to prevent military action. Some Republicans criticized the approach as reckless. The crisis was not just political. It was a warning about the limits of unilateral ambition. The island of Greenland became a flashpoint, a test of power, and a mirror of geopolitical tension. The stakes could not be higher. The world was watching, and yet discussions continued behind closed doors. To see why this crisis is so dangerous, we must examine the hidden mechanisms shaping US ambition and Arctic geopolitics. The Greenland crisis is more than headlines. It reveals a system beneath the surface, a system where power, resources, and politics collide. The Arctic is no longer a frozen frontier. It is a stage for global competition. The United States sees Greenland as a strategic pivot. Control here means monitoring rivals, projecting influence, securing resources. Behind the public statements, there are layers of strategy. Military planners consider the location for defense and deterrence. Economic advisors see access to rare minerals and energy. Diplomats navigate fragile alliances with Denmark and NATO partners. The mechanism is simple yet profound. Power is measured not only in territory, but in control over strategic choke points. Greenland sits at one of the most important, but this system is also fragile. Overreach could provoke allies, undermine treaties, and destabilize international norms. Ambition, strategy, and politics intertwine. The Greenland debate exposes the hidden engine driving modern geopolitics. And then the tension escalated further. Another flashpoint emerged, sharper, faster, and more personal. The situation escalated rapidly. Denmark and European allies reacted strongly. They warned that the US statements were not just provocative, they were dangerous. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said military action could end NATO. She was not alone. Leaders across Europe expressed alarm. Inside the US, the political storm grew. Senator Ruben Gallego introduced a resolution to prevent an invasion. Republican Representative Don Bacon criticized the administration's "we want Greenland" rhetoric. The media amplified the tension. Headlines called it unprecedented. Commentators debated whether the president could or would act. Meanwhile, the White House doubled down. Officials said all options were being considered. The message was clear: ambition over caution. This was the second mini-crisis in weeks. The first shocked the world. This one shook alliances, tested norms, and questioned America's role in the Arctic. The stakes are no longer abstract. They touch every relationship, every treaty, every calculation of power in the region. And at the center of it all, Greenland, a frozen land that could ignite global tension in ways few expected. Behind strategy and diplomacy, real lives are affected. Greenlanders and ordinary citizens around the world feel the ripple effects. You might think this is a story about politics or power, but at its heart, it is about people. Greenlanders watch their homeland treated as a bargaining chip. They wonder if their voices, their culture, their sovereignty matter. Families live under the shadow of uncertainty. Businesses worry about disruption. Communities fear the consequences of international ambitions. Beyond Greenland, ordinary citizens around the world feel the tension. Alliance fray. Trust between nations erodes. The idea that borders and treaties can be ignored leaves everyone uneasy. And here you come in, the world is watching, but so are you. What will you demand from leaders who gamble with lives and alliances? Will you let power overshadow principle? This is more than politics. It is a test of conscience, of accountability, of humanity. Every decision made in Washington ripples across the Arctic. It touches lives, futures, and the very idea of stability. If local lives are affected, the world feels it too. Geopolitics, trade, and security all hang in the balance. The Greenland debate is no longer local. It resonates across the globe. Allies in Europe watch closely. NATO cohesion is tested. Trust between nations is fragile. Rivals, like Russia, see opportunity. The Arctic is becoming a chessboard of influence. Control of Greenland could shift strategic balance. Trade routes through the Arctic could change. Natural resources, including oil, gas, and rare earth minerals, attract international competition. Any move by the US affects markets worldwide. Even diplomacy feels the strain. Negotiations between countries now carry the weight of potential conflict. Every statement, every hint of military action echoes beyond Greenland. Global security frameworks are on edge. Decisions made in Washington could trigger a chain reaction. From the Arctic to Asia, from Europe to the Americas, nations calculate risks. Greenland is no longer just a territory. It is a symbol, a test of power, a mirror of how nations balance ambition with cooperation. To understand what comes next, we must explore three possible futures: optimistic, moderate, and catastrophic. The future of Greenland hangs in balance. Three scenarios emerge. First, the optimistic path. Diplomacy prevails. The United States works with Denmark and Greenlandic leaders. Agreements are reached. Resources are shared responsibly. NATO cohesion strengthens. Trust is restored. Greenlanders retain sovereignty, and the Arctic becomes a model of cooperation. Second, the moderate path. Tensions escalate but do not break alliances. Statements and threats dominate headlines. Negotiations are strained. Greenland's resources are contested. Economic and strategic friction rises. Allies cooperate reluctantly. The world adapts, but uncertainty lingers. Third, the catastrophic path. Ambition overrides caution. Military action or unilateral moves fracture NATO. Trust between nations collapses. Geopolitical rivals exploit the chaos. Global markets and security are destabilized. Greenlanders bear the brunt of political games. Each path is possible. Choices made today shape decades. It is a test of foresight, wisdom, and restraint. The Arctic is no longer a frozen frontier. It is a proving ground for power, ethics, and global order. The story is not over. What happens next depends on decisions, principles, and courage. Greenland is more than ice. It is a test of ambition, strategy, and global responsibility. The world is watching. Every statement, every move sends ripples across nations. Allies, rivals, and ordinary citizens feel the consequences. The choices made today will shape the Arctic for decades. Will power override principle? Will diplomacy prevail, or will miscalculation spark conflict? As a global citizen, you have a role. Demand accountability. Question decisions that risk lives and alliances. Engage, share, and stay informed. History is clear. Unchecked ambition comes with a cost. But foresight and cooperation can preserve stability. Greenland reminds us that the Arctic is no longer distant. It is central to global strategy, security, and ethics. The story is far from over. Watch closely, think critically, and prepare for the next chapter. Because what happens in Greenland will not stay in Greenland.